During what was supposed to be a joyful family vacation, my mom turned to me without a hint of guilt and said, "We've booked your ferry home. We'll be sailing on without you," as if I didn't belong there in the first place. On a Caribbean voyage, my mother declared, "We've secured your ferry passage home. We shall continue sailing without you." My sibling smirked, and his spouse labeled me cheap, so I departed. 3 days later, consequences arrived forcefully. Daniel had anticipated this moment for many months. After securing a promotion at his technology company, he had invested significantly in a Caribbean cruise for his relatives, a rare opportunity to exchange their typical holiday disputes for clear blue waters and tropical rhythms. He had personally covered 60% of the expense, including spacious accommodations, underwater excursions, and even an exclusive dining plan. The remaining cost was divided among his mother, Linda, his elder brother, Mark, Mark's wife, Jenna, and their soft-spoken Aunt Carol. It was not inexpensive, nearly $8,000 from his savings, but Daniel believed it was worthwhile to witness everyone happy for once. The vessel shimmered beneath the Miami sun as they boarded, a magnificent structure of glass and gleaming white metal. Daniel breathed in the briny air, envisioning tranquil days by the swimming area and evenings under the constellations. He had always been the conciliator, the one smoothing over Linda's sharp remarks or Mark's constant need to surpass him. This journey, he thought, would be different, a fresh start. Yet, the initial signs of discord appeared swiftly. At the welcoming buffet, Linda pierced a prawn and remarked, "Well, Daniel, this must feel satisfying, flaunting that impressive new income." Her tone was light, but her gaze held a hint of bitterness. Mark grinned, piling his plate high, while Jenna added, "Indeed, Mr. Big Shot, covering the expenses like a champion." Daniel dismissed it with a chuckle, attributing it to their usual banter. Aunt Carol merely sipped her chilled tea, observing silently from the periphery. By evening, as the ship moved away from the coastline, Daniel stood on the deck, the horizon stretching endlessly and golden. He felt a spark of optimism. Perhaps this could succeed. Perhaps they would finally perceive him as more than just the family's financial resource. He had no idea how mistaken he truly was. The inaugural full day of the cruise began promisingly, sunlight reflecting off the waves, a gentle breeze rustling the deck chairs. Daniel reclined by the pool, enjoying a mango beverage, determined to absorb every moment of this escape. However, the tranquility did not last. At dinner that evening, in the ship's refined steakhouse, the atmosphere shifted. Mark and Jenna ordered premium whiskey and an additional platter of lobster tails, grinning like children raiding a confectionery. When the server presented the bill, a substantial $32, Mark casually pushed it toward Daniel. "You'll handle this, won't you, brother? You're the one with the generous bonus." Daniel's grip tightened on his eating utensil. "I already paid for most of the trip. We agreed to share the additional costs." His voice was steady, but internal irritation simmered. Jenna rolled her eyes, twirling a lock of hair. "Goodness, Daniel, don't be so rigid. It's just funds." Linda, cutting into her steak, added, "He's always been particular like that. You'd think he'd relax with all he possesses now." The table chuckled, except for Aunt Carol, who kept her gaze fixed on her plate, her lips tightly pressed. The following morning, things worsened. Mark and Jenna swaggered back from the ship's excursion desk, boasting about reserving a private yacht excursion, $1,600 for the pair. "Put it on the family account," Mark stated, patting Daniel's shoulder. "You're the backbone here, man." Daniel's jaw tightened. "There's no family account. You pay your own way." Mark scoffed. "What's the big deal? You're wealthy now." Linda overheard from her lounge chair and called out, loudly enough for nearby passengers to notice. "Daniel, stop being so miserly. It's mortifying." The taunts had intensified. Jenna accidentally spilled her drink on Daniel's shirt, giggling. "Oops, I suppose you can afford a new one." Linda murmured to a server about her frugal son, who couldn't properly treat his family, her voice carrying across the deck. Daniel noticed the sympathetic glances from strangers and felt his face flush, not with shame, but with a slow, rising fury. He had spent thousands to make this journey possible, and they were portraying him as the antagonist for establishing boundaries. That afternoon, he sought refuge in the ship's library, needing solitude. Aunt Carol found him there, sliding into the seat opposite him. "They're testing you," she stated softly, her gray eyes sharp. "Always have." Daniel nodded, gazing out at the boundless blue. "I thought this would bring us closer." Carol's smile was small, knowing. "Money doesn't mend avarice, child." Her words resonated with him, a quiet caution. He did not yet realize it, but the true tempest was still gathering, and it was not the weather. By the third morning, the Caribbean sun could not dispel the coolness settling over Daniel. He had risen early, hoping a quiet breakfast might improve the journey's unpleasant atmosphere. The dining room hummed with conversation, the aroma of fresh coffee and pastries filling the air. He chose a table near the window, observing the waves roll towards a distant island. For a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to believe the worst was behind him. Then his family arrived. Linda entered first, her handbag slung over her shoulder like a military commander. Mark and Jenna followed, whispering and smirking, while Aunt Carol brought up the rear, her expression unreadable. They slid into the booth, and Daniel braced himself for more criticisms about money. He did not anticipate what came next. Linda placed her coffee down with a deliberate clink, cleared her throat, and fixed him with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Daniel," she said loud enough for nearby tables to glance over, "we've reached a conclusion. You're disembarking at the next port. We've arranged a ferry for you back to the mainland." The words struck him like a blow. Daniel blinked, his fork halfway to his mouth, awaiting the jest. None came. Mark leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "Yes, brother, you're somewhat dampening the mood, no offense." Jenna nodded, popping a grape into her mouth. "It's simply easier without all your restrictions." Linda folded her hands, her tone dripping with feigned concern. "We're here to unwind, dear, and you're creating tension. This is for the family's well-being." Daniel's father, as silent as ever, stared at his plate, nodding faintly as if approving a shopping list. Aunt Carol shifted in her seat, her fingers tightening around her mug, but she remained silent. Daniel's chest constricted, a blend of disbelief and betrayal clawing at his throat. He had paid for 60% of this floating paradise, the cabins, the meals, everything, and now they were casting him aside like unwanted luggage. "You're serious?" he managed, his voice low. Linda's smile broadened, a glint of triumph in it. "The ferry departs at noon. We've already informed the staff to have your belongings prepared." The table fell silent, the clatter of dishes around them suddenly deafening. Daniel's mind raced, every dollar he had spent, every sarcastic remark he had endured, all leading to this. He could have argued, demanded an explanation, or pleaded with them to reconsider. Instead, he felt an unusual calmness settle in, like a storm passing. He set his fork down, stood, and looked at each of them, Linda's smugness, Mark's amusement, Jenna's indifference, his father's cowardice, and Carol's quiet, flickering unease. "All right," he said simply. "Enjoy your journey." He walked away, their murmurs fading behind him. An hour later he stood at the port in St. Thomas, bags at his feet, watching the ship diminish against the horizon. The ferry horn sounded, and he boarded, finding a seat by the railing. The ocean stretched out, vast and indifferent, mirroring the emptiness he felt, not sorrow, not even anger, just a clean separation. He had given them everything, and they had rejected it. As the mainland drew nearer, his phone vibrated, a text from Aunt Carol. "They'll regret this, trust me." Daniel stared at it, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He did not know what she meant, but something told him the cruise was not over for them yet, not by a long shot. Daniel returned to Miami late that afternoon, the ferry ride a blur of sea spray and quiet contemplation. He had expected to feel humiliated, discarded like an annoyance, but instead, a strange sense of relief coursed through him. The apartment he had rented felt like a sanctuary, no sarcastic comments, no entitled demands, just silence. He dropped his bags by the door and sank into the sofa, replaying Aunt Carol's text. "They'll regret this, trust me." Her words lingered, a promise he could not quite decipher. He did not have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, his phone chimed with a voicemail from Carol. Her voice was calm, almost amused. "Daniel, you should see this chaos. I'm rectifying it, don't you worry." Curious, he called her back, catching her mid-cruise on a patchy ship's signal. "What's happening?" he inquired. She chuckled, low and conspiratorial. "Let's just say they're learning what family truly signifies." It began subtly. Carol had misunderstood Mark's request for a luxurious catamaran excursion in Nassau, booking them instead on a dilapidated fishing boat swarming with insects. "Oh, I thought you said an authentic experience," she told them, blinking innocently as Linda swatted at mosquitoes and Jenna gagged at the bait's odor. Mark grumbled about the downgrade, but Carol merely shrugged. "It's more economical. You're always saying we should economize, right?" Daniel could almost hear the smirk in her retelling. Then came the spa disaster. Linda had raved about the ship's 5-star massage package, a treat she had planned for days. Carol, tasked with confirming it, neglected to secure the appointments. When they arrived, the spa was fully booked. She directed them to a questionable roadside shack instead, peeling paint, a flickering neon sign, and a masseuse who smelled of stale cigarettes. "It's more adventurous this way," Carol insisted, watching Linda storm out with a towel still draped over her shoulders. Mark snapped at her. "This is absurd." Carol's response was priceless. "Oh, you mean like expelling Daniel from a trip he paid for?" Her true masterpiece occurred at dinner. The family had boasted to other passengers about their close-knit dynamic, conveniently omitting Daniel's expulsion. Carol waited until they were mid-story, Linda spinning a tale about ungrateful individuals, before interjecting, loud and clear. "You mean like Daniel, the one who covered most of this cruise before you sent him away?" Heads turned, forks paused mid-air. Mark's face reddened, Jenna sputtered into her wine, and Linda hissed, "Carol, not here." But Carol just smiled, sipping her water. Just being truthful. By day 5, the family was disintegrating. Carol's accidental overbooking of a shore tour left them crammed into a sweltering van with malfunctioning air conditioning, while she opted for a solo walk and enjoyed iced coffee in the shade. She texted Daniel a photo of them squabbling by the dock, Mark gesturing wildly, Linda fanning herself with a crumpled map. "They're miserable," she wrote. "Karma got a front row seat." Daniel leaned back, grinning at the image. He hadn't asked Carol to do this, hadn't even hinted at retaliation, but she had perceived the betrayal more clearly than he had. Her quiet disruption was a gift, transforming their paradise into a petty hell. He typed back, "You're a legend." Her reply was immediate. "Not finished yet." The journey still had 2 days remaining, and Daniel knew Carol wasn't bluffing. Whatever she had planned next, he was content to observe it unfold, far from the ship but closer to liberation than ever. Daniel spent the next day re-establishing his routine, work emails, a gym session, a quiet dinner alone. Carol's updates had turned the cruise into a distant, darkly amusing sideshow, but he was not prepared for the next development. Late that evening, his phone illuminated with Linda's name. He almost ignored it, but curiosity prevailed. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight with urgency. Mark twisted his ankle on a shore trail. "The ship's clinic wants $1,000 upfront for treatment. We need you to transfer it now." She paused, then added, "Family helps family, right?" His stomach churned. The plea sounded rehearsed, her tone too refined for panic. "How did it happen?" he asked, stalling. "Slipped on some rocks," she snapped, impatient. "Just send the money, Daniel, we're stranded here." He hesitated, promising to call back, then access the ship's online passenger portal, a benefit of his initial reservation. A quick chat with a staff member confirmed it, no medical visits logged for Mark. It was a fabrication. They had concocted a sob story to extract more money from him, likely to fund their dwindling onboard expenditures. Fury flared hot in his chest. They had banished him, and now this? The next blow landed the following morning. An email from the cruise line arrived in his inbox. A $2,400 charge notification. Puzzled, he called customer service, his pulse quickening as the representative explained that before he disembarked, Mark had sweet-talked the front desk into upgrading his and Jenna's cabin to a sprawling oceanfront suite, complete with a private hot tub and butler service, using Daniel's linked credit card. They said it was a family adjustment. The representative said, apologetic. We assumed you approved. Daniel's laugh was bitter. Mark and Jenna had lounged in luxury, celebrating their triumph over him, while he had been on a cramped ferry home. The receipt showed they had moved in the day he left, sipping champagne he had owingly paid for. He stared at the phone, the betrayal sinking deeper. This was not merely greed, it was calculated. They had planned to drain him dry, even after cutting him loose. He imagined Mark's smug grin, Jenna's dismissive giggle, Linda's sanctimonious nod, all while Carol's quiet war chipped away at their facade. The cabin scam alone was a gut punch, but the fake emergency layered on a venomous edge. They hadn't just discarded him, they had turned him into their personal piggy bank, laughing behind his back. Daniel fired off a text to Carol. They faked Mark's injury for $1,000 and charged me $2,400 for a suite upgrade. Unbelievable. Her reply came fast. Bastards. I've got this. He didn't doubt her, but the audacity gnawed at him. He paced his apartment, replaying every moment, Linda's feigned tears, Mark's entitlement, Jenna's sneers. He had given them a dream trip, and they had repaid him with deceit. The money stung, surely, but the malice behind it cut deeper. By nightfall, he had calmed enough to strategize. He could dispute the charges, perhaps even pursue fraud, but Carol's promise held him back. She was still on board, a wild card in flip-flops, and her last text echoed in his mind. Not done yet. Whatever she was concocting, it had to strike them where it hurt, harder than they had struck him. He poured a beer, settled onto his balcony, and stared at the city lights. The cruise was their battleground now, and he trusted Carol to turn it into their reckoning. For the first time in days he felt the scales tipping in his favor. The cruise's final day dawned brightly over Miami, but for Linda, Mark, and Jenna, the return was a descent into pandemonium. Daniel woke to a flurry of texts from Carol, her play-by-play unfolding like a revenge novel. She had saved her best for last. As the ship docked, the family shuffled to baggage claim, bleary-eyed from her relentless sabotage, crowded vans, botched spa days, public denunciations. But Carol had one more card to play. She had misfiled their luggage tags during a shore stop, rerouting their suitcases to a port in the Bahamas. They stood empty-handed, clutching only their carry-ons, as a harried staff member shrugged. "It'll take days to retrieve them," he said. Linda's face crumpled. Mark swore under his breath. Then came the real shocker. At the terminal, Linda reached for her purse to hail a cab. Nothing. Mark patted his pockets. Empty. Jenna dumped her bag on a bench, makeup and receipts spilling out, but no wallet. Somewhere in the chaos of a crowded Nassau market, where Carol had wandered off during their last outing, they had been pickpocketed. Cash, cards, identification gone. Daniel got the full scoop from Carol's gleeful call as she sipped coffee in the shuttle line. "They're stranded, kid. No money, no way home. Guess who they called?" His phone buzzed minutes later. Linda's voice cracked through the static. "Daniel, we're in trouble. Lost everything, wallets, passports. You've got to drive down here, please." Mark cut in, gruff and desperate. 3 hours, man. You owe us this after abandoning the trip." Daniel let the irony hang, their entitlement as thick as ever. Jenna's whine pierced the background. "Do it, Daniel!" He pictured them, sweaty, disheveled, glaring at each other in the terminal, and felt a slow, satisfying burn. "You're not welcome here," he said, his tone ice cold, echoing Linda's dismissal from that breakfast table. Linda gasped. "Daniel, this isn't a game!" He hung up, the line going dead before Mark could bark another demand. They turned to Carol next, but she was already gone, her shuttle rolling toward her hotel, a first-class ticket home booked on her own dime. She texted Daniel a selfie, grinning with a mimosa. Left them to stew. Enjoy the silence. He did. The apartment hummed with calm, the city skyline gleaming beyond his window. They had spent a week exploiting him, 60% of the cruise, a luxurious upgrade, a fabricated sob story, and now they were facing the consequences. Carol's disruption had stripped away their pretense, exposing them to the strangers they had boasted to on board. Daniel imagined Linda's frantic calls to the bank, Mark's pacing, Jenna's sulking, no funds, no identification, just each other to blame. They had expected him to intervene, the dutiful son and brother, but he was done being their rescuer. Later, he checked his phone, no follow-ups, no groveling voicemails. They had found a way to escape, perhaps a loan from a sympathetic tourist, or a reluctant call to a distant relative. He didn't care. The silence was his triumph, their desperation his reward. Carol's final test sealed it. Karma's a hell of a cruise director. Daniel laughed, pouring a coffee as the sun dipped low. The trip he had financed had become their confinement, and he was free, 3 hours away, untouchable. Whatever came next, they would face it without him. For once, the scales felt balanced, and he savored every second of it. Daniel thought the cruise debacle was behind him, a closed chapter of minor retaliation and hard-won distance. Then, 3 days after the family's Miami stranding, his phone chimed with an email from Riverfront Apartments, subject, urgent tenant payment issue. It was his parents' landlord, a name he vaguely recognized from years past. Hello, Daniel. It read. You're listed as the financial contact for Linda and Mark Lee. They're 4 months behind, $5,600 owed. Eviction looms. Please call. He stared, incredulous, then laughed, a sharp, disbelieving bark. They've done it again. He dialed the landlord, a gruff man named Pete, who answered quickly. Daniel, good to hear from you. Your folks said you'd cover the rent, true? Daniel's voice was steel. No, they lied. I'm not their guarantor. Pete sighed, papers rustling. They swore you'd step in, gave me your email, said your family. Daniel cut in. Not my concern. They're on their own. Pete hesitated. So, no assistance? They're out next week without payment. Daniel leaned back, the absurdity almost amusing. Correct. Initiate the eviction. Pete muttered. Families, huh? And hung up. Daniel didn't call Linda or Mark, didn't need to. He could picture it, Linda's frantic packing, Mark's cursing, Jenna's complaints, all while they scrambled for a lifeline he wouldn't extend. They had pinned their last hope on him, banking on guilt or obligation, but he was done playing savior. He texted Carol. They listed me as rent backup, facing eviction. Told the landlord no. Her reply was a string of laughing emojis then. Perfect. Let them sink. Daniel grinned, imagining their panic. 4 months behind, no cash after the cruise drained them, and now no home. He didn't check on them, didn't care where they landed. They built this mess, from the ship to the shore to this. That night, he met Carol at a diner, her eyes gleaming over coffee. They thought you'd yield, she said. Not this time, he replied, clinking her mug. To new beginnings. She nodded. To new beginnings. The landlord's call was their final gamble, and he had called their bluff. Eviction loomed for them, but for Daniel, it was freedom, complete, unshakable, and his alone.